I always find it funny because I say that a lot of my musician friends end up jumping ship and becoming lawyers and doctors and whatever stereotypical profession.
That's
earns
super
money.
interesting.
Yeah, but you also see the opposite thing too.
Yeah.
You see a lot of lawyers and very successful people really diving wholeheartedly into what they're doing here at the school. Like there's a real need for whatever meaning they're not getting from their profession. They really look for it in at least in what we're doing at the school.
So this is the first time I've used the in-person studio face-to-face, and
it's a very nice studio, I must say. Yeah.
Thank you. It's actually fitting that I'd bring a good friend of mine from kind of a similar walk of life in a sense, because you run a business, but very dissimilar in the sense that you run a business that is all about music.
Yeah. Yep.
So I'm joined by the Titan, I like to call him the Titan, Michael Avery from the Richmond Music Academy, but we can't just define you as Michael Avery from the Richmond Music Academy. You're much more.
Yeah, I am. Aren't we all though?
So casual Friday today, but Michael, just due to being Michael, casual days every day.
Casual. I mean, it's funny you even calling it a casual. When I see that, I don't think casual.
No,
So
okay, right.
we do come from very different walks of life.
Yeah. Although when the open mics are on, I do see you in the suit.
I can bring it.
You can
if needed.
You can. So I thought I'd just bring you on.
Yeah.
Wondered if you could give us a little bit of a background.
Yeah, sure.
Into what the business does.
Yeah.
As a starting point.
Yeah, sure. Well, I now have 3 music schools, I guess you could say. I've got the Richmond Music Academy, which was the first school that opened 12 years ago now, kind of thing. And I'd like to say I knew what I was doing or getting myself into in the early days. But a good way to learn how to run a business is to just run a business.
Yeah.
And hopefully you've got enough time to work out what you're doing as you go along. And I feel that we were lucky enough in the position, location, time of history where we set up that I was really able to be trained by working out what the hell I was doing as I was going.
Yeah.
I think we came at the right time and place, I think. The rent was fairly cheap when we started, opened up our shop and dwelling because we lived above in the early days.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I considered it a great achievement a couple of years later when we were able to move out from the upstairs and have the whole huge building occupied purely by the business.
Yeah.
So long story short, a few years into it, we had one particularly important student who came. And the school has never been the same since.
Oh, God.
Really.
Oh, God.
They're currently learning not only with one of our best teachers, but 2 of our best teachers.
Well, I don't do things in half measures.
No.
Michael.
Yeah.
I'm just like super interested in the starting point story, because why does one start a business, right? So you've been schooled in kind of classical guitar from
that's true.
And
yeah, that's true.
Why did you just start a business? Why couldn't you have just gone and been a guitar teacher? What was were there any reasons specific, or was it just kind of osmosis?
I think it was I think I was actually really looking for what I was going to do, because I had previously just followed my curiosity. Studying classical guitar doesn't necessarily have a huge career plan unless you're going to be a world famous performing guitarist. But even then, I don't think it's that profitable of a career. And I was really, for literally a year or 2, really quite perplexed on what the next steps for me were. I realize now I do have an entrepreneurial bent, maybe not as much as others, but more than most musicians. And I, with a friend of mine, Dan, we picked Richmond as a good location to set up a
good choice.
Yeah. And I do think that was a great, great decision, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think even from the early days, I tried to create a business that was not just about making money.
Mm.
I've always, especially with music, I
Yeah.
think I have seen other music schools, and the ones that are purely about making money, they don't tend to do that well.
Yeah. So tell me, because we were talking
yeah,
about this over lunch. We were
yeah,
talking about the fact that,
mm,
you actually
mm,
genuinely care about creating an ecosystem whereby
yeah,
the students love
absolutely,
engaging with the
yeah,
teachers, and the teachers are very engaged
yeah,
with the business because they're
mm,
everyone's well looked after and cared for.
absolutely, yeah,
We
yeah,
talked a little bit about that.
yeah.
So is that why it's sustainable for you? Is that
I
the
think
only
so.
way that you could actually run it?
I think for me personally, yeah,
Yeah.
like because I think I go to sleep at night knowing that I think I'm doing a fair thing by everyone who interacts with the business,
Mm.
the employees and the students, the teachers, and I'm trying to. I even, just between you and me and the world who's
And the
listening to
world,
this
and it's never about money community.
I do tend to sort of send a lot of clients off to the out the door a little bit,
Yes.
because I really asked myself, would I want to work with this client? And I'm really trying to sort of make sure that the teachers themselves are having a good experience.
So you're protective of your staff and your teachers
Yeah,
as much as
absolutely.
you're protective of
Yeah.
the students themselves. It's
Yeah,
an important thing, right?
yeah. And I often say this to the teachers, and I mean it, and which often is quite surprising. I put the teachers, the employees first, and the client second, which sounds like a very bad strategy for business, but I think long term it does create a better environment that people want to be a part of as students, if they're not shown the door, which doesn't happen very often, but but it means that it's actually um, that someone's actually thinking about the teacher's experience, and so that they can really do what they do well with students that actually really fully want to be there, or at least they're congruent about wanting to be part of the school. I try and think of it as capitalism light, what I'm doing.
Cannibalism. I don't think it's cannibalism.
Not
No.
cannibalism.
No. It's capitalism light.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we kind of talked about that over lunch as well, around amending capitalism the way we see it, so that it's maybe progressing in a way that is.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't mind really shedding, as the business owner, a fair bit of income for that, because I think ultimately I just feel much better about it, really.
So in a sense, the cost is borne on you.
Yeah, that's true.
To be able
That's
to
true. Yeah.
create a business that you feel, I suppose, in a way, really comfortable in having built and managing on an ongoing basis, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, Michael, the idea that you've got these students coming in, quite. I mean, one of the bents, one of the specific things I know about the Richmond Music Academy more than the new one, the Michael Avery School of Music, is that it has a specific focus on adult learning.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
That's very unique.
Yeah.
Because often there's a lot of kids that want to get involved in music.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that, why that's happened.
Yeah.
A little bit of your reflections on that.
I think I think a large part of why that's happened is probably the location of being so close to the city. But I think early on I realized that, gosh, we are getting more adults than a normal music school. And I think we really ran with it early on. It was like, okay, let's actually amplify this aspect of the business the most, which on the one hand is really good because it is a chance to do something very, very different. Because there's enough schools for 5-year-olds out there to learn music, which again is part of my strategy to make a good environment for the actual teachers. We all like teaching little ones. But it's probably, I think, especially for the advanced musicians that we have at the school, they probably find it a bit more rewarding to be able to work on maybe more mature concepts in music,
Mhm.
especially if people are doing songwriting, that
Mm.
sort of thing. Like the things that a 20 or 30 or 40 or 50-year-old might be exploring with music will be a bit more mature than maybe little ones.
Yeah.
Um,
But it's just not,
Yeah.
you know, it strikes me that it's not, and I'm speaking from my own
Yeah.
bias and my own experience with the
Yeah,
school.
sure.
And I have
Yeah.
a love for this school
Yeah.
like no other love.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a large part of it because I know that it's not just the, you know, the learning about triads and
Yeah.
learning how to play scale patterns, and
Yeah.
it's music and the ability to be involved in music has a lot more meaning.
Yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
in adulthood than it
Yeah.
ever felt like it did in childhood.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah, I think
And
so.
from a student's perspective,
Yeah.
what you guys have provided
Yeah.
us as adults is an ability to, and you've talked about this
Yeah.
on numerous occasions because I know you like to get out the skateboard and everything
I
and
do, yeah.
access the
Yeah.
I mean,
Absolutely.
do you see that a lot?
You do, and the phone call I get almost all the time
Yeah.
from clients
Yep.
is, and it's almost rote by rote exactly the same, which is I used to play when I was a kid.
Yep.
I didn't quite appreciate it back then.
Yep.
I had to stop while I got my career going, at
Yep.
least the early phase of getting a
Yep.
career. And I really wish I had kept going with it. Can I still learn, or is it too late for me? Kind of thing. And it's a pretty meaningful part of their life.
Yep.
And I can tell with a lot of these students, like they might only be coming once a week, but it's for most of them the highlight of their week. And the fact that it's a one-on-one interaction, I think in modern life, there's not too much of that where you have a mentor, and it's not just classroom setting where it's one teacher, 30 people. That one-on-one relationship is pretty special, and I don't think there's much of that really in modern life. I think there might be other artistic things that have that, but I can't think of many other things where there's a one-on-one meeting every week or multiple times a week with someone who's teaching you something as special as music, and also the music lessons are often a metaphor for many other things too.
Oh,
I think,
they sure are. I mean, would you agree that there's, you know, again, thinking about my own personal experience, and I might even contribute in a second about what it has been, but there seems to be like a profound impact on people's lives from going back into a creative or a artistic space which they felt resonant with as a child, but somehow maybe it comes back when some challenges appear in life. Or
I think so. Yeah.
But have you seen that sort of
Absolutely.
seen differences in people after they've actually began lessons or even?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think particularly with the songwriting students, I think making meaning of what's going on in their life, and you can really see these shifts in how they're making sense of their life itself. Just like I'm sure creative writing people have the same thing too, but the ability to reflect on where you're at and make sense of, often people will come for lessons after some big change in their life. It could be like a new career, leaving an old career, a breakup or something like that. But it's really something that can carry you through to this next phase of seeing the world differently and seeing themselves differently. It's a big part of personal development, I think, whatever's going on in the lessons. I mean, it's most obvious in the songwriting, but I think it's even the same with people who are just getting regular piano lessons or guitar lessons, because it's a real skill you have to commit to. And it's a real, I use the word physical metaphor a lot because it's something that you can really use as a developmental tool for your. This is really good, actually, thinking about all this. Yeah. Because it also takes years to learn these things. So music. And you see the people change in ways that they wouldn't have expected just from having a chance to really learn from a musician that's got a different perspective on life than they do. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like part of it is you have a capability or you're in a position to be able to take back a little bit about what was uniquely you as a kid. For me, that I mean that can be part of it. you know, if you were a kid that loved to potter around and plant seeds in a garden, as an example, and you just left everything behind, and then all of a sudden something's happened where you've been pulled in a million different directions, and you lost yourself a little bit, to be able to go back to that sort of earliest programming, and
I think so.
and get back into that, even just that. So, you know, you talk about songwriting, and there's a whole thing around that. But if you just played the flute, and that's what you did as a kid, and you're just like, hey, I really need to reconnect with what it is to be me, or what I felt it is to be me. And you start to get those lessons again. That can have a profound impact on you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, in a sense, like some of the "it's never about money" concepts have come from my own experiences. And as you know, when and we'll be a bit self-indulgent, and we'll talk about my experience, because I think in having a lot of friends now in the music school and talking as adults and talking to them about their experiences, there seems to be a bit of an arc there. With obviously slight differences, obviously. But, you know, I picked up a guitar and started on YouTube. And then I called you, Michael, I think it was about 7 or 8 years ago.
I remember.
Now it's been a while. And I said, I need a guitar teacher, and I know the one that I want.
Yes.
I checked this person out on a website, and that's the one I want. And you were like, sure. Got in there, had the lesson. I don't know whether I had 2 or 3 lessons a week. It was crazy, right? I was going nuts.
Yeah, it was a lot.
What was your comment at the time?
Well, it's funny. You do tend to make calls on people, and what I've often found is the people that write an essay in an email, saying I've got big dreams of grandeur. I want to be the best. I want, not only do I want one lesson a week, I want a lesson every day.
Did I do that, Michael? Did I want to be the best?
No. Well, just like the people that are incredibly enthusiastic.
Yes.
That sounds like an ideal student.
Yep.
And I still think maybe it is, but what I generally find the pattern is those type of people,
burn out.
They tend to come for one lesson if you're lucky. And then you never see them again. And so I don't know what that is. But that's an interesting pattern.
I think your words were, this guy's going to burn out. Let's see how long he lasts.
We give everyone the benefit of the doubt.
We do, but I appreciate that, because it's not been something that, I mean, it has happened in my life before, but
but here you are 8 years later.
Well, actually, you know, you talk about the songwriting scenario. For me, I was going through real difficult times at that particular point in time, and music for me was a bit of a relief. And going from guitar, then starting to perform, and then maybe getting into songwriting and understanding that, it was interesting. Like even the way that I would actually write lyrics was quite closed off at the starting point of that, and then as I grew and I matured, and as I was dealing with some of the challenges that I was going through in my personal life, all of a sudden the lyrics became more clear, and I was willing to open up a lot more. And I found that whole lyric writing and the songwriting process itself was very cathartic and very much something that allowed me to decompress. And, you know, really haven't looked back, and from the perspective of it, making money out of it or having a career, it's not what I do. I have my practice and I do my, I'm a financial advisor, and that's what I do. But I love to do music on the other end, and
you take it pretty seriously too. Like it's a big part of your life. It's something you've devoted a lot of time to.
But it's coming back to the podcast. It's I've recognized from dealing with clients, dealing with other business owners over time, that we need to have things in our lives that make our hearts sing, really.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's what we're talking about. Like if I was, as a financial advisor, all it was for me was about making money and as much as I possibly could, I would be missing out on an opportunity to be able to do some other things in my life as well. So, when I was thinking about having a revision of why this podcast is even created, it's for this. It's for understanding that, yes, money is super important, but we don't want to leave the other things that are super, super important in our lives just by the wayside. And I think it's why you talk to the fact that you, whilst money is important to you as well, and you need it to be able to live your life,
Yeah.
building a community, making sure your teachers are really happy, the
Yeah.
students are really engaged, like
Yeah.
prime example, me, is what it's all about.
I think so. Yeah, it really is. And it also just feels very nice to have a business where you feel like you are thinking more broadly about everyone who's involved with it, which is a good skill, I think, to really put yourself in the shoes of the employee, put yourself in the shoes of the client. And I think that, it does take some time, but I think eventually people realize that, okay, this business actually is not run just selfishly, and it's not run purely just to squeeze money out of people. It's really trying to do what it purports to do, which is to really help people make music a part of their lives. And also doing that in a way where the most important part of it, which is the teachers and the trainers and the facilitators, are also being thought of, and their experience is a big part of the whole enterprise too. And I could run it in a way where it's much more narrow, where it probably would be much more profitable. But if I really had to choose personally, and this is just because I'm a musician personally,
yes.
and I think that's still going to be there the whole way through, is that I feel better if it's more holistic as a business. And I think arguably it could be long term a much better strategy as well, because it's going to mean that the relationships the business has are much more long term. Having teachers that are there long term is probably a very good thing for the business, and students also too. So I think, it's definitely a strategy that shows itself over time rather than in the short term of months or 6 months or a year. But I think, there's people that have been at the school a decade or almost a decade.
Yeah.
So that's a long time, I think,
In terms of careers, it strikes me that there's very few musicians that end up in the top echelon in terms of money making.
Hardly any. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And so, and I think as a society, maybe, I don't know whether we do revere the arts as we used to, but certainly from a capitalist point of view, I don't know, there seems to be a bit of a disconnect there.
There is, yeah.
So that is interesting, because when you then talk to musicians who are career musicians, you really get the sense that there is a connection between their meaning and their occupation.
Yeah.
And I think that is a super, super important part of what makes a meaningful and a happy life, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Notwithstanding, you need to put bread and butter on the table.
Yeah.
I
That's
get
always
that.
going to be there. Yeah.
But musicians are an interesting,
I think so.
type of people.
I think they really
in that
are.
sense.
Yeah, and I've always thought if someone's chosen to be a musician, you already know that most likely, not always, most likely they've realized that the highest, most important value is not money. Like, by even the choice to be a musician, you've already set a goal that, okay, like, getting as much money for my time and effort is not the most important thing.
And in a way, right,
Yeah.
you see the artists that are super talented and have their own ideas, and in order to be able to make more money, they actually have to conform to the populace.
Yeah,
and so
that's right.
their art is actually diminished as a result of that, right?
Yeah, that's right. There are ways and there are certain people who can really straddle that line really well.
Yeah.
And they've found a niche where they can fully express themselves.
Yeah, amazing.
And it's beautiful.
That's
and
a beautiful
somehow
thing,
they've got enough of a fan base, or just through very intelligent moves, they've been able to fully go down the artist path and get very good financial compensation for it at the same time. It's pretty rare, though, I think. And
Yeah.
I think, while I'm not a jazz musician, I think all my jazz musician friends, there's certainly not a market fit to jazz. I think if you're choosing to be a jazz musician, you've certainly chosen the path of relatively low income, I would say.
Yeah. Do you think do you think I mean, have the experience of dealing with your adult students, but you also have the position of dealing with other musicians and peers. Do you feel like there's a sense of a connection between the amount of money one makes and their general level of happiness or well-being, or are there any reflections in your mind on that?
Well, tell me more. That's a good question.
Well, I mean, you know, we talk about the you're dealing with adult students who might be lawyers and you know, maybe high paid surgeons or you know, and you know, as a teacher in music, I know you're a teacher as well, not just the owner. You get to actually, I suppose, engage with these people quite regularly, so you get to know their lives and get to understand a little bit about them. Do you see a connection between money and a person's general level of well-being and happiness is really what I'm saying, because you also engage with teachers and the teachers who are musicians, you know, they may have different scenarios and different financial means, but again, musicians from a financial perspective, they're not relying on necessarily a big, huge wage.
Not at all.
So do you have any observations around that?
Well, I think it is interesting because we mainly teach adults and we're in a fairly affluent area. We had the CEO of a major bank actually as a client once. I won't name names.
Yep.
But
there's only 4 of them.
Yeah. Oh, well, it was one of those. Take a guess.
How stressed was he or she?
Well, they really need something like the music lessons, I think. And I think I always find it funny because I say that a lot of my musician friends end up jumping ship and becoming lawyers and doctors and whatever stereotypical profession.
That's super interesting.
Yeah. But you also see the opposite thing too.
Yeah.
You see a lot of lawyers and very successful people really diving wholeheartedly into what they're doing here at the school. Like there's a real need for whatever meaning they're not getting from their profession. They really, really look for it in at least in what we're doing at the school. Yeah.
Yeah. We were talking before about the conversation that you were overhearing. A group of people were sitting together and you were just observing how you felt that the conversation was lacking a little bit. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that, because that was interesting. I know that I know we talked about this behind closed doors.
No.
But it was interesting.
Yeah. I was at a restaurant sitting with a couple of my friends who are musicians, as you no surprise. And there was a table to the side of us that was maybe 8 people. And we were there for 2.5 hours and we could hear everything. We weren't necessarily trying to listen to that table, but they were loud enough that, you know, it was open for everyone to hear. It was 2.5 hours really talking about with very little depth, money and how much money they're making, what job they want to do next to make a higher salary, how much they're going to sell their house for. It was
a financial planners convention.
It was leveling on cliche. And I wouldn't normally be intrigued in it, but I was amazed they could talk about that for 2 hours with very little focus on the purpose of why they want the higher salary or why they.
Do you think the relationships between the individuals were such that they could only talk in such generalities? And
seems that is the quality of the relationships and the social situation they had there. That was really how they connected. That was the topic for 2.5 hours.
Isn't it interesting that our connection between individuals is likely to be deeper if we're actually not talking about money?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Whereas if we're just talking about money, the connection between us, the depth of the feeling we have for each other is probably not as strong.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
It's like we're objectifying our humanity in a sense.
I think so, yeah. And it's a funny one, isn't it, living in the capitalist society, which I think is a great way of organizing a society, but there's obvious problems with it. And
so we're just going to say right here, Michael is not an anti-capitalism style.
Obviously, yeah.
Like we talked quite a bit about the fact that capitalism brings about amazing opportunities.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
but
Yeah.
there are some sort of
There's some tweaks. I mean,
yeah.
the major to minor tweaks are definitely necessary.
Major to minor tweaks. The musician talking about major to minor tweaks.
And obviously,
Fantastic.
I'm not
Yep.
qualified enough to know exactly what those things are. But I mean, you can see there's a lot of things that we get right.
Yep.
And a lot of things we don't get right too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's going to be very interesting the next couple of decades, seeing how we tweak these things and what kind of things do we need to do to sort of keep the things that do work very well and keep a modern society functioning, and where can we work on the blind spots of the modern capitalist society, and what do the next steps look like where we do address the things that it doesn't do quite so well, whatever that might be. Yeah.
What do you feel about the It's Never About Money podcast? I mean, like in terms of the name and what comes to mind for you when you hear that.
I think I think it's a brilliant thing that you're doing here, and I think I'd be very interested to see the kind of people you get on here. But I'm also very interested in
it's an eclectic group.
Yeah,
Michael.
I'll bet. Yeah. I reckon it's a great starting premise for the show. It's never about money. I wonder, is it ever sometimes about money?
I think it is.
Yeah, sometimes.
And I think that's the point.
Yeah, it's sometimes about money doesn't really sound as good though, does it?
No. Yeah. And I think, we use a label like that to actually generate conversation about it.
Yeah.
Because it seems to me that sometimes we lose perspective and it seems to be always about money.
Yeah, yeah. And I think anything that's getting you thinking more broadly and purpose and what actually is meaningful, and using money, which as a means to an end rather than end in itself, is a really good way of thinking, I think. And it's getting you from the ground level up and thinking, okay, if it's a means to an end, what's the ends that are really important to me? And how can I make a full and rich life out of the means, which is my financial resources. And I think as you mature, I think your relationship with money probably changes quite a lot, I think. And you can do fantastic things with well-applied capital.
So going forward and thinking about the fantastic things that you're doing in your business, what's keeping you up at night? What's the stuff that you're still working on? And
I am particularly fascinated in a stream of models at the moment, which are broadly called adult developmental psychology, which essentially maps the sort of the spiral of an adult or anyone's growth and meaning making. And it's I'm enjoying trying to apply some of these models to how I run my business and how I'm thinking about the goals that I have in my life. And broadly, these models are quite interesting. Like they sort of, they pretty much map people's level of growth.
What I was trying to get out was, is there something you're doing with RMA that you need to change, that you'd like to do more of? Is it expanding into new markets? Is it stabilizing what you've currently got? Is it working with more students, kids, adults? More around that sort of side of things. Could you give me?
I think more and more I want to see if we can actually achieve the potential you could get from what we do.
Yep.
And at the moment it's, I guess, more or less it is a little narrow. It's just one-on-one meetings once a week. You get incredible things from that
of course.
mentorship thing.
Yeah.
But there's got to be more broad ways to work.
So you're talking about
with
like
those goals.
development of a digitized,
Yeah.
online platform for learning, that sort of thing,
Well,
seminars and presentations and
I've
those
thought about that. Yeah, I mean, like there's things around that I think that we could definitely do.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that we haven't quite worked out is how to actually make it a really great way of connecting the students in groups and group level learning too. Like how, because that could be very meaningful too.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If you can get people collaborating together and sharing the journey together, you know, because it can be a little bit siloed with they're only talking to their teacher essentially. But if they were actually finding a way to connect with the other students, that could be quite.
No, I agree. I mean, one of the
Yeah.
greatest parts of what you guys do is the open mic nights as an example, the ability to share people's wins with each other that you've got going there. So that collaborative approach and community is a real cool part of it, isn't it?
It's not very hard, I think. It's just about finding a way to make it work. But I think if we had more of that could be particularly good, I think.
That's good.
Yeah.
So I don't think because you're in studio, Michael, that you get an opportunity to avoid this question, because everyone gets this question.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
What is your spirit animal? And I'm going to add to that, if your spirit animal loved music, what would they listen to?
That's funny.
That was ludicrous.
That's really funny.
That was
That's
terrible.
really good. No, I like it.
You liked it? Okay,
yeah.
Great.
My spirit animal, that's actually really good.
I mean, is it a bird that?
I think it is a bird. I know that might be cliche because probably I'd be surprised if everyone says it's a bird, but I wouldn't be surprised if everyone says it's a bird. But I think I like that metaphor of the
the flappy, flighty bird.
What type of bird would it be? That's a good question.
Now we're in the music field. Now we've got to specify the genre, Michael.
Yeah, the genre. Yeah. I'll think about what bird it is, but I think it's some type of bird. But genre.
What sort of music would this bird be listening to, Michael? Right now, at this particular point,
I think they'd be listening to some pretty, I think, ambient.
Oh, ambient.
Ambient, yeah, very slow, but whatever sound, resonant and ambient and slow music, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this has been an absolute delight because we have conversations like this all the time. Yeah. So it feels quite organic for me. Yeah. And I love the fact that could get you to contribute.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Yeah.
Appreciate coming in. This is the first time I've used this studio in this fashion, and it's been an absolute delight.
It is a wonderful studio. Yeah.
You're a wonderful man. Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope that this one was enjoyable to listen to and there were some moments of value. If you have resonated in any way with the sentiments of this podcast, we would be delighted to direct you to our website, www.itsneveraboutmoney.com.au, for more free resources and education aimed at improving your capacity to make sound financial decisions for the benefit of your family. We wish you every success, however you define it.